Hi, morning. Hi, Tarunjit. Thank you for this. I can see questions coming in. So here, a quick little background. I'm Rachana Chowdhary with almost 18, 20 years of experience, having been in the PR industry. But primarily, my experience takes me back into handling press releases and the electronic dissemination of stories have been my main forte. And I set up MediaValueWorks about 9, 10 years ago. And we cater to clients' different needs on stories dissemination in India as well as other parts of the world. Primarily, many clients in India we know have got businesses which is driven out of US, UK, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa. When clients have got their major stake happening from other markets, people want to communicate in those markets. Then how best are the ways and means to go ahead and communicate? So this has been little background. I can see some questions already coming in. I would read out a few of them. If we are in sync now with the fact that we are talking of press releases dissemination in India and we are talking of press releases dissemination across the world. So before even we get on to seeing the question, what is the difference between PR Newswire, EN Wire, Business Wire, and the likes? Which one? Okay. So can I take a minute to first explain how press releases actually function at the back end? It's an industry in itself. Probably we can draw a parlance by talking and referring to maybe how ad tech as an industry has evolved over a period of time. And we now know ad tech delivers more ads, more focused ads, and the traditional advertising world had to adapt to the new age of ad tech. This is something that probably we can refer as PR tech. What happens at the back end in a press release mechanism is there are three folds of process to distribute stories, which means a press release is typically in India, we have always seen a press release is written, then a bunch of email IDs are collected. Then we say, this is the target media list, and we see them and we say, okay, let's start shooting the press releases off. And then you make a phone call to the journalist and you pitch for your story. And then the journalist often lands up saying, oh, don't call me for press releases. Talk to me only when you have exclusive stories. Talk to me only when you have a leadership code. We see this every day in our lives. So if we understand at the back end why a journo is responding in the manner he's responding, it would simplify us in identifying and putting our efforts in the right direction to differentiate whether the story needs to be approached via a press release method, whether the story needs to be approached via an article, or whether this needs to be put in through an authored article, etc. So a press release travels the journey of a press release is like this. The press release travels from a news agency. So the threefold step of a press release is there's a news agency in India, we call it the PTI. And there's a terminal feed that the press release company would feed into the news agency terminal. So in India, it is the PTI, but in other parts of the world, maybe in US, it is the in US, things are very different. US has multiple news agencies and news terminals. Bloomberg is a news terminal. So it depends on whether the story is a financial story or the story is a general story, whether it should be sent out via Reuters or whether it should be sent out via Bloomberg, whether it should be sent out via a press association or whether it should be sent out via an Associated Press. So there are multiple levels of bifurcation that US media has done over the years to make sure your story reaches the right guy. In India, we still thrive on PTI, IANS, ANI, UNI, and we disseminate stories to their inboxes as emails. And some of them, there are very few users today, even today after many years, that PTI has been publishing press releases on their terminal. And from the terminal, it reaches out to pan-India journalists. But we still have few takers of that funda in India. If we understand the news agency as one edge of distribution, what next? The second edge on a press release dissemination is the web-only dissemination. Now, what happens in a web-only platform is any press release network or any press release wire or any press release dissemination, the names of a few you have pointed out, PR News Wire, EIN Wire, and Business Wire, and there are, I don't know, there are many, and we work with all of them. Probably, I think we work with major wires in different parts of the world across for many years. All these wires have integrated their backends with different portals. This portal mechanism is called a web-only distribution, which means what we need at the end of the day, if the final outcome a client wants is, I want 30 coverages. Which of these 30 are coming? I'm not concerned. I want 30 coverages or I want 300 coverages. There could be a range that press releases can help you get 300 links, can help you get 400 links, can help you get only 40 links. It depends on what you have selected as your keywords, how industries were targeted, which regions did you target. We have been doing stories which are as focused on, maybe we only reached out to only Singapore as a market, or the second brief was, okay, let's reach out to Singapore plus Southeast Asia, or the third brief is saying, okay, let's reach out to Asia Pacific. So when you do Asia Pacific, maybe you're covering Australia within that. So there are different ways of understanding what a client is looking at and what market is he willing to tap into. And you select respective wires which are penetrating into those markets and delivers those trade media or the general news media outlets or the general portals. There are many portals, there are many blogs, there are many radios, channels, websites, there are many TV channels, websites. So it's very advanced, and we need to understand what is the client really looking at from the global coverage point of view. Having done this, it moves to the web only distribution, where we have bifurcated our penetration, and we say, okay, maybe my story is not for the news terminals, maybe my story is only for web distribution, and we have done a web only circuit. So the web only circuits are also popularly being sold in India through many news networks, and it is called the online visibility package, OVP. If I'm sure you all must have got proposals that, okay, here is an OVP package and the OVP costing about 18K, 19K, would you want to consider that? So OVP will not give you news terminals, which means you're not reaching the top line media, but OVP is reaching across to those humongous amount of portals, maybe 300, 400 of them. This is the second distribution mechanism. And the third distribution mechanism of a press release is what we do in India, the typical email distribution mechanism. So in emails, you select the right set of journalists and you send them out, and then you follow up, and then you. So having understood that these are the three bifurcations would make our lives simpler in recommending which approach is required and why a client should take this approach. Going forward, we have to understand, while we are in this current scenario and we see media sector facing the brunt, and we all understand there may be lesser amount of print media, there may be lesser amount of the typical media relations job roles where we have been chasing journalists with stories and contacting media. All that may try to typically not phase out, but it will decrease. Hence, opting and understanding press releases at this hour is very important. So that probably this comes in as a PR tech, and we are able to transform our story distribution mechanisms and move this to a mechanism which is a single no touch and web only distribution. So we've also started a new platform called instapr.live, and it's INSTAAPR.live. I would request all of you all to have a look at it. do check out how instapr.live is operating. Select your own pack and upload your stories, send it out for dissemination. And this is an India only platform that we've started. And for international, we are always in touch with all the news wires of different locations, and we've been working with several companies doing these distribution mechanisms. I'm just looking at hi. So has the first part been clear on? Okay, there are many questions. I'm just going now with each of the question, unless I want to. So the difference between PR Newswire, that's the first one. Ishita, you have shared. What is the difference between PR Newswire, EIN, Business Wire, and the likes? Which one would you recommend? So this is the answer which I tried explaining, that there are three platforms. PR Newswire is primarily news agency driven platform. They do offer web only packages, and they are, so PR Newswire and Business Wire have been in this industry for more than 50, 60 years, not 1 or 2 years, 50, 60 years. They are the pioneers, headquartered out of US. They understand this business, and they have penetrated the world. 125 countries, different portals at the back end are integrated with PR Newswire and Business Wire feeds. Worldwide, I think every day they send out tens and thousands of stories to every sector that you may choose. So there'll be an auto sector, there's a finance, there's biotech, there's nanotechnology. Within technology, there must be 50 deeper versions, which says that if you're talking of ERP, it'll go to X. If you're talking of if you're talking of mobility solutions, it will go to Y, and if you're talking of artificial intelligence, it will go to. So that's the bifurcation which has been done. EIN is, so PR Newswire and Business Wire, I would recommend them to be at same levels, because they both have been the pioneers of the industry for 50, 60 years. EIN is primarily a web only mechanism. Through EIN, you reach those many websites, and EIN has created humongous amount of their own titles, and it gives you the offering to get the stories up on the web. So what press releases or what PR needs to do today is, are you making the story go viral? That's the key question we as PR professionals need to understand and figure out and give the answer to our clients. Is the story that you created or you conceptualized, is it really being perceived as, maybe is it giving Google results? If someone is searching for the keywords that you have used in your story, is it giving you backlinks? How do we get into understanding these technicalities is what we are trying to do the session about. I am seeing the next is clients request for global coverage from India, and there are few journalists based out of India who report for global publications. How do I tweak my story to pick them up? Clients request for global coverage from India. And there are few journalists based out of India who report for global publications. Okay. So Vinod, I see this question of yours, and I'll take two parts in this question. So clients request for global coverage from India. So here I am typically imagining that your client is based in India. He's headquartered in India. He's running his entire Marcom operations out of India, and he has given the mandate to you as an Indian PR agency to get them global coverage. Is this what you're trying to achieve? So typically, when this is a request, what we need to work out is tie up with many other news wires across the world, or maybe you can choose to work with us as MediaValueWorks. We have tie-ups already with many other global agencies across the world, and we typically do this: take a press release out of from an Indian market or from an India client, and have this distributed across to stories going out in Middle East and Asia Pacific and Europe or specific countries. We've been doing this. So you need to understand the expectations and partner with respective news wires to send the story out. Now, how do I tweak my story for them to pick up is the challenge where PR agencies come in as a play. So we don't want to ever imagine that by using a news agency or a news wire, either the client or the respective PR agency is under any impression that they are giving away half of their job to an outsourced party or outsourced agency, and maybe tomorrow the client may say that typically if you have to outsource, then we could outsource, then what is your role, the typical of the client conversations. We don't want to get into that right now, because we are understanding the mechanism first, because you are the communications leader and the communications consultant for your own clients. Hence, we do not, so your understanding and your knowledge is what the client is thriving on. So we do not want to even come across to a level of conversation with any client, because the client understands that you are a communications consultant. You're not a distributions agency. So in PR industry in India, we are so colored with the fact that the content and the communications and the strategy and the distribution and the reporting, everything is one man's show. It is not. Distribution of a story in itself is a different department altogether. It's a different industry. By press releases distribution, we are referring to that industry. What strategically we've been getting coverages for clients in economic times and in business world and business today and in tier 1 category portals, that's the role of a communications agency, because each story is strategic in nature. But press releases aren't strategic in nature. Press releases are for web only distribution, or for news agency led distribution, or for terminals on Bloomberg, Reuters, Dow Jones, whichever you select, Factiva, whichever, are actually disseminating stories which are verbatim news feeds being sent out on the web to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of portals. That is almost an edge on getting digital coverages for the client. So it's almost an extended part of digital marketing, if we may say. So that's the difference we want to educate our clients in India, that if you want to go digital, we got to subscribe to a press agency or a newswire distribution. But if you're doing strategic PR, which is very important for brand building, those are the areas where we need to continuously keep in touch and do media stories and keep in touch with media and keep our media relations going and keep thriving on new areas and new conversation, because we know a story once published in particular publication A then cannot be taken into B, because then each one has got their own copyright issues. So press releases are verbatim feeds which are distributed and you get multiple coverages out of it. The tweaking part of the story is being done very well if you are in the control of the news agency who is understanding where you want to change. So typically, like we did a story last week, and it was targeted for US, but we floated 5 versions of the story. So it was US one version, Singapore Asia Pacific another version, Middle East another version, Africa another version, and India another version. So the tweaking mechanism was and is brought into play each time, because maybe, so it was a story of a technology firm which is talking on business continuity. So referring to the current scenario, there are a lot of enterprises across the world who need to thrive on business continuity softwares and platforms to get access to their, when there's no staff and there are dysfunctional organizations are not able to function in their original way. How do you cater to those business continuity platforms. So in each region, to make the story relevant, what would you do? You would change the customer references, A. You would change the features of the software in case the feature has got a customization option. Typically, when we did the story, the software was capable to adapt to the Middle East, what do I call it? It was adapting to the Middle East financial domain, requirements, which was compliance led. Right. So when there is an edge in the software which is driving Middle East compliances, then that story has to get that feature and it needs to be embedded in our press release, and we tweaked it for Middle East. But the organization clearly said our compliance features are still not live in America, and it is still not live in Singapore, so we cannot use these lines for these regions. So those are the areas that we tweak the story regularly on by conversing with the client to understand what works for them needs to be sent out via the best press release distribution agency. I'm coming to the next one. I don't know if I'm going very fast. Tarun, you may have to help me if there is, if I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow. 1 second. In the current scenario, how do we ensure our releases are carried by wires like PTI, INS? Okay. Now, this is a question that we all have actually answered. I did cover this subject that in India, press releases getting covered by a PTI or IANS journalist is something that we kind of gradually should look into other better options to get our penetrations right. So all these news agencies, the PTI, IANS, ANI, UNI, they all run press releases dissemination platforms. So whenever there is a press release and we want to organically pitch it to the news bureau, he or she may not be very inclined because their job roles are not to pick up press releases of companies, rather do the reportings which are up on the street. So when we get deeper into them, we know what happens is you are narrowing down your scope each time you are chasing a journalist to pick up your press release and put it up on the news agency with his tagline. And we in India really appreciate the tagline which says PTI and IANS. But globally, it's not like that. A press release with a tagline /PR Newswire or /Businesswire or /EIN is an accepted now. It works brilliant there. In India, we still want to feed in. We can deliver press releases with the /PTI through a direct association with PTI by doing their press releases, which are primarily paid model press releases. But we do that, and we can do that, and it does deliver results. And we get that tagline over there that this story is not being reported by a PTI journalist. It's a news feed. No journalist is involved in the story. That's the tagline which PTI in India has put it right on the top. So PTI would typically give you, one PTI press release would give you maybe an Outlook, maybe sometimes Business Standard, maybe sometimes the Week, maybe sometimes. So different portals will pick it up. But each time, if it is a syndicated pickup, you will know that it carries a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that no journalist was involved in this story. It's a syndicated news feed. So we need to prepare our clients to accept that. Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm just going to the next one. Chaitali says, how does one go about distributing a global press release in the right manner? So this is almost what Chetu we have covered, that we have to understand the requirement, decide which regions we want to go, decide whether he wants a news agency feed, he wants a web only feed, or is he only wanting an email distribution feed. So each of that would decide on the costs and would decide on the impact, all of these. If that is now clear, I'm moving to the next one. How do I get a business angle into global COVID stories? Right. So, Vinod, thank you, because typically we know all stories today are related to the pandemic and are related about the COVID, and we want to thrive on the best business angles that we want to talk about. A, business continuity. So, organizations, in whichever form they are today, need to address this to their stakeholders and to the markets at large, that they are ready and they have their business continuity platforms in place, and they would be in the business without any disruption. That's the angle to drive right now. As we move, as the pandemic is moving and we want to learn to now live with this scenario, there would be a few other story angles which will emerge. So probably in the last 45 days to 60 days, maximum stories done by us are on continuity. I imagine we are moving to the next phase, and within this few 45 60 days, we have done stories which addressed continuity, which addressed on successes that were carried out by organizations during the lockdown, and how people and HR comes into play, ensured people worked from home and they could manage and they had successes, and we are talking of those customer success. This is again a COVID driven business angle. So business continuity, then the client success stories, and the next one which I am formulating and I'm in touch with a few and I know they may come up with, is how they are changing their course of action and moving into discovery sessions with clients. This is the third angle I have picked up, and I'm seeing people are enjoying to thrive on this, is because unless you are now getting into discovery sessions with clients, it would be difficult for us to come up with story ideas. Hence, let's converse with clients and figure out what are the things they are doing, how are they going to enable discovery sessions for their customers to. So we need to really think from the customer point of view. That's the job role of, for communicators, that's been our job role always, but right now it is even more, because only then we will get that hook. Otherwise, in industry, we know PR industry, we are only and only driven by that one single hook to drive the story. Everybody who has the knack of understanding what's that hook can create a story, and we are good to go with it. So those are the few angles that we need to drive, Vinod, if that answers your question. Um, I'm taking the next one, which is, what is the relevance and value of backlinks in an online press release? Oh, wow. Michelle, thank you. So this needs to be understood by first understanding what is a press release. When we talk about a press release which is uploaded and put out through a press release distribution platform, if we get that understanding in place, we would be able to get an answer to the importance of backlinks. So I'll again answer this from the point of view of being a digital marketeer and being a communications person, both together. How do you thrive on putting your forte? So the value of backlinks in today's world, we all know that the business which is up on the web needs to have backlinks, because it indexes the website or indexes that particular link, maybe a forward slash, maybe we have this link which says maybe PRPOI forward slash, maybe Rachana, and maybe press release dissemination session. So each link needs to get indexed onto Google, and that returns enhanced search results. And that's what SEO has been all about. So SEO, which stands for search engine optimization, is the way where we have decided to pick up, say, a 20, 25 keywords of an organization, and we go embedding and creating backlinks on those keywords. So typical example, maybe I can explain better with an example, is say there was an online dental care brand. Okay. Now the online dental care brand ABC wanted backlinks in their press releases and in their stories, because typically people would go search online and search for the brand ABC, or maybe search for the best features to fight enamel, or to fight cavity, or to fight. So there we need to understand what is that which is very, very important for the client, that needs to be embedded as keywords in our press releases. Once we've understood that, then we go back to creating backlinks, so that those backlinks will generate higher results on the web for that client. So while the digital marketing functions outside of the PR industry, there is the platform that we use called press releases, which embeds the keywords and ensures you get backlinks, so the results on the web are far higher. So you get Google results if your stories have got backlinks in the, if your stories are carrying backlinks, you have enhanced search results. Is that slightly clear now? It needs another section altogether on digital marketing. I'm Michelle, you can contact me whenever for more clarity on this. Chaitali is asking, what are the press release assets? Okay. Chaitali, nice. See, now a press release which is put on the web has got the following: a headline, and the headline, we know as PR professionals, the headline has to be maybe 8 words and 9 words and not a lengthy one. And so the headline is the key hook. The headline should communicate the story. So the headline, the summary line or the subheadline, maybe a typical 400 words, 500 words. There are different news agencies which will also charge you basis the word count. So each time you've crossed a 400 word, which now in your story has touched 425 words, you may have to pay for 25 extra words. So you would rather cut it down to making it a 400 words. So there are different charges for the press release word count. Each press release which is sent out from the news agencies and news wires and platforms would carry the web links. You can anchor text words. So anchor texting word is when you want those keywords which we referred on the top about important keywords are anchor texted, and those links are then flashed out. The other press release assets are definitely that you can use, embed your video links from YouTube. You can insert some PDFs, you can insert some PPTs if you want to. Some platforms allow, some platforms do not allow. You can insert image and you can insert logo. And very important, there are contact details which are put out on the web along with the press release. So when there is a contact detail, because typically when we do PR stories, we know there is no contact details put in. And many a times the perception is a story with the contact detail is not really a PR story. This is a perception we have in India. But from the user point of view, and especially coming forward, we know there will be crisis, there will be. So
how does anybody contact the organization if there is no contact detail put out? Hence, a press release carries the contact details, whether media wants to reach out to them or whether businesses or customers or prospects wants to reach out to them. The contact details are put on the web and organizations can receive inquiries on those contact details. So these are the, sorry, I think.
I'm just wanting to connect back. Sorry, I believe there was some glitch and maybe the internet dropped or something happened. I'm just going back to the questions that we were taking on press releases, and I believe there were loads of more questions. I'm not able to see them in my this chat. If someone can post them back again, I would now go and talk about how we want to capture our how we want to go deeper in now taking digital PR forward with clients. Maybe all the past 20-25 minutes that we've understood slightly more about the business of press releases distribution and how distribution is a different ball game altogether. How creating a story is so strategic in nature, how writing those content is very strategic in nature, how as PR professionals we want to understand about key messages, how we want to drive those storylines. And after having driven those storylines and driven those strategic stories, we may choose to send out press releases to stay up on the web, to keep the distribution going, to get the keywords right, to get those backlinks, to get those press release assets, which are the new videos floated by the client, the new updates, the version updates, and you have those several documents that you want to float on the web. We do all of that through press releases. We cannot do those via our stories in mainstream media. Hence, we need to have a combination of press releases and the mainstream media stories in our PR strategy that we recommend to clients each day. Going forward, we would see probably there is higher acceptance of press releases and there will be more takers for stories like these. I'm moving to understanding if the session is going in sync with the understanding and people are able to, understand how we can effectively do press releases dissemination. And if it is not very technical, I would be happy to also take up questions. You can email it to me or I'll be available on the web to take those questions. We can continue those discussions. Uh, do have a look at instapr.live. I would give the spelling out. It is instaapr.live, L-I-V-E, is the platform where we are, it's a low cost, no touch mechanism for sending out stories for those startups, individual businesses, people working out of homes would eventually also need visibility and would need ways and avenues to be more visible. And staying visible on the web would help them drive their businesses. Hence, we created InstaPR.live to enable smaller businesses to come up and upload their stories and get their publicity on the web. Thank you, Tarun. We were talking sometime back. Google deemed links in press releases unnatural and mandated no following them. Even though Google took away the anchor text links in press releases, are there still press release optimization opportunities to enhance SEO? Absolutely, Tarun. Thank you. This is a question that is being raised by all the newswire agencies across the world, because somewhere down the line, Google realized that the businesses of news wires were thriving on Google enabling for those to be successful. Google recently as in still some time back, so Google created their own PR distribution platforms. And while we say Google's distribution platforms are up it doesn't mean that other news agencies are not able to deliver because Google is asking those press releases to be unnatural. It doesn't work like that. There are ways and means to tackle that. All the news wires have actually internally tackled it in their own way. Hence, the press releases still gets disseminated. There have been different technicalities at the back end which were thrown out. People had to update their settings, and after having done those updated settings, the no follow links are there at many places. People have started adopting to inserting several social media links to send out stories. And you would notice that press releases are now and are even more carrying the social media icons of share buttons. So a couple of years ago, we thought the web links were the only options to stay up on the web, but probably that slightly, not 100%, got transferred, and the social media sharing icons have become prevalent. And there are several plugins. If you go deep in researching digital platforms and content sharing platforms, there are several available plugins today which helps you post your press releases in a far more effective manner, which will combat the question that you have put in, that Google took away the anchor text link. So there are many more plugins available which is working in isolation and is not really is not really based on Google results. So maybe Google may not show up results. So a press release. So what has happened is, initially we always thought if the press release is up on Google, if the press release has got captured at 40 places, you will see 40 links. This is what we always thought. But that's not the case. The press release today is up on 400 platforms, but Google may show you only 2 platforms. But those plugins on 400 platforms are available through the press release reports because each of them were plugged in with a separate technicality and the codes. So there are actually, if I may explain a little technical part of it, there are 3 versions of codes that we use in press releases dissemination. There's an XML code, there's an RSS feeds code, and there's something called widget. So normally widgets are the ones which are used by press release wires, and widgets are blind on Google. So widgets go blind on Google, but it doesn't mean that the press release was not captured by by that respective news portal. It may not show on Google because maybe the backend was embedded using a tool which was not read by Google. So those are the ways the press releases combating has been happening. We continue to disseminate stories, and Google may give only 5 results, but technically the story has got carried in 500 portals. Yeah, so that probably helps you. That gets slightly answered. Tarun, thank you. I'm moving to the next one, which is TOI. TOI division of OMS, yeah, has launched MediaWire. What is your opinion and efficacy on this platform? So, Tarun, OMS as a platform and the efficacy of this platform is, we can again take this answer in 2 formats. A, if we want the story to be visible only on TOI platforms. So maybe 25 of TOI platforms, which will be a combination of Navbharat Times, so NBT plus MT, which is Maharashtra Times, plus maybe their iDiva, plus maybe their, 20 more portals driven by TIL, and maybe if we want to only stay limited to TOI portals, then the MediaWire has been their answer. And TOI group per se for many years have been trying to
break into the fact that how do we do media wire, and so the media net or media wire, they are all division of, so there may not be, so media net basically are paid articles. You are doing officially paid articles, but when it comes to efficacy of the platform, there are some guidelines. So so we do sometimes stories, and we say we did an ET Media Net. Now, ET Media Net would deliver what to us is the big question. Now, ET Media Net will not give us ET CIO, will not give us ET Mainstream, will not give us ET Media Net, will only give us ET Panache in print. Okay. So if we want to get our stories up on ET Panache, then TOI group doesn't mind, take the story out. But we all know if our client is putting out a serious story, it is about his business expansion. And ET Panache as the whole page talks about going out horse riding and going out, and it is about the lifestyle of a CEO. Then a business story is a misfit to appear in ET Panache. So we need to, so there are very deep ways to analyze whether we want to opt for media net options, or there are many other ways to go in rather than going the media net route. Because each platform of TOI group, which is available for media net, are differently placed platforms and are not eating into the mainstream, because we may be colored by the fact that yes, probably getting an ET story serves the purpose and we may do a media net and we are done with it. No, because the media net placement would become a question, and if we are not aware, then we may land up and the client may finally question us and we may get into. So understanding what is the placement of media net story is the prime question we must ask before considering a media net. Sure, if that answers that question. I'll take the next one. Do you think PR tech is a viable field that will gain momentum in the coming years? Is that the future of PR? Absolutely. So, Victoria, absolutely, PR tech is the way forward because every industry has transformed and tech has taken the way forward in every field. Technically today there are tools that are not just doing grammar check, we all use Grammarly. There are tools that are even creating press releases. So to ease the work we may have tools and technology to support us, but what we need to still understand is the strategic thinking of a PR professional continues to hold even more power than what it earlier had, because tools may make you more efficient, but the strategic decision making of yours still remains with you, and tools can only help you become more, it can ease your life maybe. So there are PR tweaking tools, maybe because we know the story has to be put on 5 portals and each portal will need a different version, because you cannot do exactly the same version, and if you put the same version out, the portal will not carry it, and Google will blacklist the portal. So how do you work this out? So there are ways and means to do PR tweaking. So there are tools available to tweak your story. So maybe you just run your paragraph of 300 words, put it up on the PR tweaking, you may get 3 versions out of it. But the 3 versions, unless it is read by you, do not ever post that, because there has been enough instances of PR stories put out without having cross-checked what the story tweaked into, changed the meaning completely. So while we want to use best tools available in technology age, we want to always cross check, because in our industry every little comma and full stop can make or break your stories. So we got to, so technology, live with technology, ride on technology, use the technology to your benefit, and make your functioning even more efficient. So we can write on, so the cloud platform we operate on, so we can write on cloud platforms, we can write on various ways to embed stories and make stories more attractive. We use all that, but you need to still have the PR edge within yourself. So PR tech is a viable field. Definitely it is a viable field. And it is a field of future. Yes, it is. Are we primarily talking only about online releases? What about press release distribution for traditional media on a global level? So, Victoria, press releases distribution for traditional media at on a global level, if I can take, each market works differently. So what would work in US West Coast would not work in US East Coast, and what may work in New York Metro will not work in California. So there are, and this is not only US, if we come to UK, what will work in London may not work for Germany, and if you're doing Germany, then it may not work for Netherlands. So each country, each region, similarly, what we are putting out in Dubai may not be taken by Saudi Arabia or Qatar or the other countries that we target, maybe Jordan or maybe. So we do stories in each of these regions. The traditional media, if we may want to broadly understand from our India syndrome, cat A, cat B, cat C. This is how we understand one language. Cat A, cat B, cat C. Our clients also understand one language. भैया इसमें कैटेगरी ए में आ गया, बी में आ गया, सी में आ गया, ये बता दो हमें. To make this little simplified for all of us, we can understand that in the cat A, cat B, cat C, there's another version that we can explain as mainstream trade media and general media. What you're trying to say is if you want to do a press release in the traditional media, then we need to again bifurcate. Are we talking of traditional media, which means we are talking of a respective TV channel, or we are talking of a respective newspaper of America? Or are you talking of, so when we say traditional media on a global level, we need to understand traditional media on a global level by far is only digital in nature, if I may want to read that line. So traditional media on a global level, we need to go and again understand whether we can even try to achieve that. Is it an achievable goal, or it is an achievable goal if the budgets are high and we can play on those budgets? Why not? So there will be a package that you will get from FT. There will be a package you will get from Time magazine. There will be a package you will get from The Economist, and there will be a package you will get from New York Post, and there will be a package you will get from a British UK paper. So if we are approaching them, A, is the story really a global story? Is the client willing to put in that many thousands of dollars to put that out? Can a universal one copy of 500, 600 words be distributed at a global level? Such stories are very, very few in nature. There isn't any, unless it's a story about a Washington organization, or maybe a political story which is now floating a mandate on the pandemic, and that's a global story. So so while we say going global is a brilliant way, there are ways and means to understand that you cannot translate the single document across the world as a verbatim post. It may not lead to getting picked up from traditional media. It will work with only web only distribution media. Yeah. So traditional media on a global level is to be approached in a very, very different manner. Yeah. Victoria, if there's more to it, because it would need a complete, hours and hours of discussion and understanding how can we achieve that goal. It's a very, very high ambition to achieve a traditional media on a global level. Very, very high ambition. Tarun, can I Are there more questions, or are we almost done with the time? Thank you all for making this a wonderful session. Lovely. Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, PRPOI, for making this a great session. I hope we all have gathered what we came here to understand. And I'll be available on during the week for more questions. Do feel free to write in to me or reach me on, or send your questions to PRPOI, and we can get those questions back. Thank you for joining. Thanks a ton. Good day to you. We can continue with more discussions on this. Extremely interesting. Thank you so much. Thanks. There's one last question. Sure, last question. Okay, Sailesh Kumar, sorry, I'm just seeing that last question. Today we saw lots of people are offering PR charge involving stories on top line digital platforms like Forbes, HTET, Times, and many others. As we understand, it's advertorial. How much of these stories are useful in larger perspective? The pricing is weird. What's your take when budget is always a constraint with clients and agencies? Sailesh, I like this question. Thank you very much for this question. So, Sailesh, what has happened is, this is a question we all are facing, and we see those many ads of several agencies who have actually just emerged, and many of them are putting out stories on these leading platforms, the names of which you have mentioned, HT and Forbes and Live Mint. And so these are the paid platforms. All these platforms have created a unique vertical. Mostly they are called the brand post. Someone has called it a brand story. Someone is calling it a media wire. Someone is calling it each news paper or publication or magazine has created a little icon. So wherever you see that icon, you know it's a paid version of the story. It's being done editorially by the same journals, put in onto a different teams altogether, obviously, and they are the look and feel for a non-PR professional or people at large. People at large imagine it to be a story which has been published on Forbes. And we see that happening. And we also know that there are quite a few takers to it. The charges are prefixed. We have those rate cards. You can call for those rate cards. And if your client, so here comes our role as hardcore PR professionals dealing with corporate communications and corporate communications guidelines. If you may observe, whether it is the Forbes or the HT or the Live Mint, just go on to those brand post links and read the profile of stories and read the profile of takers of those stories. Moment you have done that research, you would know how and why you should propose it to your client or you should not propose it to your client. Because if your client is a high-end brand with very heavy brand guidelines, and the brand guidelines says do not go for paid media. We thrive on only earned media. Then this story, which has been plugged in through the brand post, will not suffice in achieving the earned media story for the client. Hence, we want to be sure and communicate it right with the clients that let's not forget and let's not mix all in one bucket. Gone are those days. So PR stories needs to now get bifurcated. Maybe our PR reports can get bifurcated, and we start putting earned media and we start putting paid media if the client wants it. And maybe we start putting press release dissemination and news agencies coverages. That brings in maturity of the PR agency to take that client to the next level. Because if we were all putting all the coverages in one bucket and we send one report out to the client, maybe let's move forward, because these portals have started paid mechanisms, and there are some agencies who have signed up with them and they are selling these stories. It's time for us to understand, a, those stories are not earned media. Those stories do not communicate right when it is put out on the web. If the user reads it as an advertorial, then we know advertorials have never worked in organic PR world. Advertorials have always backfired. In fact, in my experience, I have always seen an advertorial proposal has backfired so badly that I don't know, maybe we must have lost more business rather than would have gained any advertorial business. So we do not want to sell advertorial in our organic PR space. If we are doing it for the sake of visibility requirement, we place it, categorize it differently, and explain to the client and make him understand that here is a method. You want to do it, it can be done, but these are the charges, and these are the pros, and these are the cons. And you will have the answer to this jigsaw puzzle that we are living with. Sailesh, will that solves little jigsaw puzzle there? Okay, Tarun, thank you. Are we good with the time? Yes. Sure, done. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks.